Welcome to the Create the Life You Want podcast, where we break down the journey of people just like you going from dream to ownership in business acquisitions, franchises, and startups. I'm your host, Jeremy Ames. Today's episode is brought to you ad-free by Guidant Financial. Guidant is America's leading company helping aspiring entrepreneurs use retirement funds to buy or start businesses. If you're committed to buying or starting a business, you can find out more about your funding options by going to www.guidantfinancial.com. That's Guidant financial.com. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Create the Life You Want podcast. Today, I am joined by Marc Warner. Marc has an interesting story. You're going to hear why Marc and his wife decided to start a restaurant, even though everyone tells you that is the scariest, worst possible thing that you could invest in. So, Marc, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Marc, what I'd love to start with, what I usually start with, is just give us a little background of what you were doing before you decided to become a business owner. And, was this something that was always in the back of your mind, or there was some moment in time that happened that shifted it for you?
Yeah. So, I'm fond of calling myself an accidental entrepreneur. It wasn't really planned. I did a lot of work in marketing. Like basically my background is in marketing and branding, and started off agency side, then worked at Prudential, client side advertising, worked at one of the first online agencies. My career progression was all in marketing and branding and building brands, which I love doing. I had a background in film, actually, like film and TV. I have a graduate degree in film and TV from NYU. But I was climbing the corporate ladder. I was doing great. And then at the company I was at before we started the restaurant, a new CEO came in and things started off awesome. But then, you just got a feeling. Nothing was ever said. No one ever came to me and said, Marc, your services are no longer required. That far from it. I was the one who ultimately resigned. It just didn't feel right anymore. And I was looking at other opportunities, and I could head up marketing at some other large corporation, or, maybe there's an opportunity to build something, for ourselves. And, had a long talk with my wife about it. And, once we decided, let's investigate this, let's go forward, kind of just idle thinking about it and what ifs and daydreams and all kinds of stuff became like, well, let's look at what equipment would cost. Let's look at what, financing, how that would work. Let's look at all these things. Let's look at, market penetration for burger joints, which is what we wanted to do. And here we are. So, it went from just kind of musing about it to, oh my God, we're doing this.
Well, help me understand the accidental entrepreneur name.
Yeah.
Because it sounds to me like this was somewhere in the back of your mind for a while, maybe even before this new CEO came on and you started to see the writing on the wall.
Well, I'm glad you said that. Like I said, for me, and this is a joint thing with my wife, that we're co-conspirators in all of this stuff, but just speaking on it from my perspective, like I said, I think marketing and branding was almost like a surrogate for entrepreneurship, or like kind of a stepping stone to it, because my job was all about creating brands and brand experiences and then getting that out to the people and building something from nothing, from an idea, a concept, to something that people could relate to. And, taking like the product or, what the company stood for and making it accessible and, something relevant to people and want to come and enjoy. But I think you're right. In the back of my mind, I was doing this for other people's brands. I wasn't doing it for my own. And when I was in film, actually, the whole sort of act of creation has always been, something I took a lot of joy from. So creating something from nothing, shooting some footage and then putting it together like old school before digital. When I, went to film school, like physically putting that film together and hanging like, reams and reams of film, like at the end of like, a syncing session, like that was like an awesome feeling to have, and knowing that's going to become a movie. Same thing with branding, and same thing with, let's create something that people would, find relevant and want to come to, and create it from nothing instead of building someone else's brand. And that's how we wound up here. And then the other part of it is we love burgers. And so that's where it goes.
Did you have a moment, Marc, with one of the clients that you worked with where you just made a major leap in their business because of the work you did on their brand, and you had that momentary thought where you're like, I did this.
Oh,
I'm getting this piece.
Yeah. Oh, not even this piece. So way back, when the dot-com boom first started. General Electric was actually one of my clients at the agency I worked at, and we did some really innovative stuff. We did like a they were launching their GE financial network, so they had all these like financial products that no one's really that's not exciting. You know what I mean? It's not like a true like consumer packaged good or something or whatever. Like it's insurance. I mean, it's like, well, it's long-term care. It was all kinds of other stuff. And so what we came up with a way to make it, kind of build awareness around is we came up with this campaign called Tossed and Found, which were actual physical wallets that we tossed in like major cities. And when people found it and they were going to be a good Samaritan and open it up and like return it like in the hotel lobby or wherever we did, it was actually like a chance to win all kinds of stuff from General Electric. And it got all kinds of buzz. It was huge. It was named by Jack Welch like one of their top 8 best practices. I think way back in 2000 or 1999. It's a long time ago, but it was awesome. And there was a little mention in all the PR and everything that went around. It was like, and organic was responsible for blah blah blah. Like that was like the one line. It was like, no, we came up with this whole idea. Like this was our thing. Like I created a video that was like like when online video was kind of hard still, like not just ubiquitous like it is now. Yeah, and it was like organic contributed X, and I was like, wow, okay, I know it's mine, but no one else does.
Yeah, and it sounds like you had developed some confidence in your ability to solve what honestly is typically the biggest problem that any new business has, which is how do you go out and share your message and get customers?
You would think that. I mean, look, I'll put it another way. Yes, that is important, but necessary, but not sufficient. The thing that my wife and I have both learned is that we have become really good at solving problems, the things you don't even expect, the things you weren't even thinking about, that come out of nowhere. And literally the show must go on. So how do you fix it? Like, well, I don't know if you want to get into detail. I could give you one really cool story that my wife came up with.
Well, let's do this. I want to stick a pin in that because I want to give the audience a little context for your story, right?
Oh, good point.
So you're at this marketing firm, a new CEO comes in, starts great, you start to get some vibes like maybe this is the time for me to do something different. Then what happened?
So I actually first started looking at, I knew that I wanted to create something. Burgers like felt good because we were grinding our own meat. We were doing like just at home, like we were doing our own thing. Okay. Yeah. And a long time ago we had like a little party during the day where like I was like grilling burgers and making like my mother's like famous lemon meringue pie. And friends of ours said, you guys should open a place where you sell burgers and lemon meringue pie. We're like, haha, very funny. Well, then, fast forward 15, 20 years or whatever it is, and we're thinking about like a business to go into. That came to mind. I was like, all right, we could do that. We could do something really cool with that. So I'm at the company, and I actually looked at like a Five Guys franchise. I looked at like other just people have done this before. Like why not like get a leg up and okay. So I looked at it, and Five Guys at the time, which was very very popular. There were no territories available. Looked at some other franchises, found one called Highway 55, and they were more in the South. And I was saying, I'm interested in starting a franchise. They're like, oh, great. And they were like all into me, like really like way into me. And I started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? Of course they are, because I'm going to build their brand in a new market that they've never been into, and I'm going to pay them for the privilege. Wow. Maybe I should do it myself. Now, granted, if Five Guys would have said yes, I probably would have done that.
Yeah, because they already had the brand cachet.
Exactly. And if Highway 55 maybe was closer to Jersey instead of in the South, maybe I would have done that. But I was not going to get any kind of tailwind from their brand. I was going to be doing it all on my own, or our own, actually, it turns out to be. So we just said, you know what, let's just do it ourselves. And it kind of fed for me personally that need to create something from nothing. Instead of having the playbook, we're going to create the playbook, and went from there.
So did you just walk in one day and quit your job? I mean, what kind of planning? This didn't obviously happen overnight, Mark. So walk us through some of the details that would help someone who's an aspiring business owner understand, like, what were the logical steps you went through before making this decision?
So interesting. Like, parents always said, like, don't quit a job until you have another job. And that's what I had done my entire career up until that point. This one was a little different. Like I had been looking around trying to figure out what the next step was, including, opening a franchise, looking at other, interviewing at other, sort of VP level marketing positions, doing all that stuff. And then it just was like, you know what? I think I'm just done, even though I don't have the next thing locked down yet. So it could have been entrepreneurship, could have been another job somewhere. It's like, you know what? Like, I think I just will have more clarity just being out of it, which is what I did. So got a nice little severance package. But at that point, so that's kind of where my mind was at. But then at the same time, it was around that time after I made that decision that then we were like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's
Okay,
do our own thing. So it happened kind of simultaneously.
back up for me.
Sure.
Because you said, oh, I decided I was done and I got a nice little severance package.
Hmm.
So explain that, because usually when you decide you're done, it doesn't lead to a severance package.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just the way I sort of worked it. I'd been at the company for a long. I had actually been at the company in two 7-year stints. I was
Okay.
there, and then I left for a year to be the VP of Marketing Communications at New York Institute of Technology. I was still in touch with everyone at the insurance company where I was, and mutually, I wanted to come back, and they wanted me back. So I did another 7 years, and it was great. So, like I said, towards the end though, when the CEOs changed, like to this day, I don't know what happened. Honestly, like why I got that feeling, why I thought,
Yeah.
this wasn't going to work. So I was very honest. I went to, my new boss because someone else, like the chief marketing officer was gone, who I was very close to. The senior VP of marketing was gone. So I was like the next guy. And they brought in someone else who came with the new CEO. And I was like, I think maybe the department will be better off without me. I think, with me out of the picture, I think you could bring on like two or three other more junior people, which will give you the horsepower that you need. I would just appreciate a soft landing if I'm going to make this move.
So
And
so
they
you
agreed.
made the case that the organization was going to be better off without you. You sort of gave them a plan, a framework
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
what
Like,
you would do if you were in their shoes and
yeah.
took you
Absolutely.
out.
It's the kind of support I would have wanted. Like if the
Yeah.
roles were reversed, yeah, give me some more horsepower. Like if they felt like, they could, if I was leaving, there wasn't necessarily a reason to, have a 1-for-1 swap out. They could, this new person who was in this new role, maybe she could absorb some. And I had plenty of people that I had trained underneath me, including one in particular who was like a mentee. I knew that she was up to the task of like doing, if not everything I did, like 90% of it. Like I trained her to replace me.
Yeah.
So, and she did a great job. She was awesome. So that's what happened. And they just agreed. And I had a really good relationship with that company. I'm not going to lie. It was good up until, just the winds just changed. And to this day, like there was, and I'll be honest, it was maybe a year or two, like it just kept just kind of circulating in my head. Like what happened? What I just couldn't do it. And I actually had a really good friend, also a mentor, like in HR. And she was like, what does it matter?
Yeah.
It doesn't change where you are now. And like, so what difference does it make? And I was like, you know what? You're right. And I haven't really thought about it since.
So there was something in your intuition that was telling you it was time,
Yeah.
and you were able to turn that into a severance package. Gave you a little
Yes.
bit of runway to figure out
Yes.
this new thing. So you did literally walk in and quit your job, and then you had to figure out what am I going to do now.
Yeah.
So
And yeah. And about simultaneously though, after that happened and I knew the severance package was coming, I think it was then right around the same time that I was like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna open a restaurant.
okay, so you had already been doing some of the research around the other
Mhm.
franchises. Okay,
Yes.
so you decide you're going to open this restaurant. Have you ever opened a restaurant before, Mark?
No.
Okay, so you have no idea what you're doing to start this restaurant. How do you figure that out?
A lot of research. And
Yeah.
also had a really good family friend who owned three delis.
Okay.
So leaned on him a lot. Found out things we wanted to do and things we didn't want to do. Part of my job, and I guess I kind of overlooked this, part of what I did besides the marketing and advertising and everything, there was a new division in the company that was under me. It was called Neighborhood Care, where it was a health insurance company where we established like retail locations all throughout New York City. So, and we used Danny Meyer's like hospitality model for
Yeah.
those locations. So I was already deeply ingrained in all of that and all that kind of thinking. And plus, as a lot of people do, like I worked in hospitality as a kid. I worked at the pizza joint. Like, I delivered pizzas. I worked the oven. I did all that stuff. So it wasn't completely foreign to me. And my wife was a waitress, when she was in college. So like that was kind of the extent. But once you get into it, when you're done delivering pizzas or working the register or doing working your tables and go home, it's very different than being an owner. But that was kind of like our connection to it. And then it was just a lot of research.
Okay. I'd love some more details that you're willing to share. What kind of
Sure.
research did you do? And then we can circle back on your family friend and what you learned from him about the deli.
Sure, sure, sure. I mean, this is obviously pre-Chat GPT. This was back in 2016.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know. I think I was just a sponge. I was just looking up everything. I think I went to restaurantowner.com. I think that was a place where I learned a ton. Um, yeah, I don't think I was even in any like social media networks, like any kind of groups on Facebook or anything like that. I did that kind of after the fact, after we opened. Wish I would have known about those then, but no, I mean, Google was my friend. I mean, I just searched for everything out there. And then, again, having that friend though, with the three delis, like I did lean on him. We had a lot of just, a couple days, just like sitting in his office at his house, in his home office, just drinking beer and talking about it and just getting a lot of insight from
Yeah. What insights did you get from him? Were you taking notes? Were you building the business plan? Like what were you doing with all this research you were sucking into your brain?
With him, no, I wasn't. I was taking a lot of mental notes. I don't think I wrote down a single thing
Yeah.
with him, but a lot of things stuck. A lot of things around like the way he dealt with like, employee management and stuff like that. Like things that I had dealt with employees too, but in a very different like sort of environment. So
Oh,
I was picking and choosing things from him that I thought would be helpful, about the things that are unique to the restaurant industry that you don't have in like the corporate world, corporate office world. So I was just picking and choosing, and I was trying. What I think so I mean, like the short answer to your question was it was a lot of research online. The longer answer is like I was basically leveraging what I had done in my prior life and seeing how it applied to this new environment. And a lot of things carried over directly. A lot of things you had to throw out the window. And it was just in my own head that I was like sort of making those decisions or whatever. Like for example, choosing a point of sale system. Like I knew nothing about point of sale systems. Um, but I just continually researched like what are the things I thought that would be most important. Being able to process offline payments made sense to me. Like power goes out, like internet connections go down. Are we going to stop doing business? No. So that was a key criteria. Having the ability to really tailor the menu and the product offerings, that was really key. And that's how we wound up with Rebel at the time and still with Rebel today. So that was just one example. I mean, honestly, I was so naive in doing this, like, and I was just applying what I knew and the way I attack problems that I just didn't know any other way. So that's just what I did.
yeah. So let's go back to your friend that owns the three delis.
Yeah.
What did you take away from him and sort of
Um,
tapping into his brain as an expert who's been there, done that?
Good question. It's almost so ingrained in me now. A lot of the things that he said that it's kind of hard to tease out what those things were. But like I think he was the first one that sort of gave me an inkling around like food cost ratios, like how much like should the cost of goods relative to the price you charge, like what that should be, what the labor cost should be. I think maybe he was the first person even that told, or he's the first person to sort of explain to me like what prime costs are in the restaurant industry in terms of like your rent, your cost of goods, your labor, and various stuff like that into the like and what that should be underneath. Yeah, so it was really he gave me a nice little introduction in a certain sense, but there were a lot of things because what he was doing was very different from what we were doing. So there was a lot of things that we threw out. For example, he was saying like, yeah, so when you set up your counter, because we were a quick service model, now we're sort of a hybrid. But he's like, yeah, you should have like racks and racks of potato chips so people can just grab that and add it to their order. I'm like, that doesn't fit with our brand. That's not who we are. Like we're going to take orders at the counter, and as someone on staff is going to bring everything to the table, there's no place where someone should be grabbing anything themselves, like no cooler to take a soda out of or whatever. Like that says something about the brand. That's not who we are. But he's like, oh, there's money in it. Like you should have lottery tickets. You should have like this. And I was like, you should have an ATM in there. I was like, no, that doesn't fit in with who we are. And so like my sense of branding and his sense of like, operations were like this sometimes. But I knew enough to take and go. And I keep saying but this is me and my wife's thing. Like we do it all together. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds though, Mark, like one of the things you had was a real strong identification with how to think about the brand and how you wanted to show up. And so
Yes.
that made it easier for you to filter in and out from someone, presumably, who knew way more than you about a food service business.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
you knew what you wanted the brand to represent. Did you
And
do some work on that before you started? I mean, you're a marketing guy. Did you build a whole brand template and talk about
yes.
what level you wanted it to be? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so one of the people who works for me at the health insurance company, he's a Six Sigma black belt, so he's all about like operations, like streamlining things and taking out like just wasted steps. But the other half of what he does is all around sort of branding and people management and stuff like that. So really less about branding, but more about developing mission, vision, and values. And so what we did was he actually left the company before I did, and he was doing some consulting work or whatever. So he moved to California. We actually flew him out before we had secured the space and we were starting to, do the build out because we basically gutted the place. But we had him come out and, Lisa and I met with him and we did a full on session of like mission, vision, and values development. Like, what are we about? What do we stand for? What's our why? Like, Simon Sinek, I don't know, you've probably heard of him. Yeah. So back in the day, like I was like one of the like first devotees of Simon Sinek. Like when he first talked about the golden circle, like I was hooked. And I followed him all the way, through, whatever he calls it now, like the infinite game and like, optimism company and all that. Starting with why was really, really key. And so we determined that we were going to make the ordinary extraordinary. Like that was sort of like what guided us. And we were a hospitality company that happened to sell burgers. And those two things have sort of stuck with us. That is what we're about. We're not about here's some food, eat it. Like it's a transaction. And for some people, maybe that's exactly what they need at the time. But really, it's about building a relationship not in just a surface way. Like honestly, like the way we deal with everyone in our community, like we are serving our friends and neighbors, and so we're going to treat them like that. And so, yeah, that's just one part of it. But that is the brand ethos. Like that's where we're coming from. And so, grabbing chips for yourself and taking them to the register
Yeah,
doesn't fit in with that.
doesn't fit. So tell us some more about as you were developing the plans for this business, how that mission, vision, values drove the choices you made. Like, hey, we're not going to have chips that you can grab. What were some of the other key things? It was like, no, this is how we have to do it.
Wow. Yeah. Well, part of it actually went into, and you know what? And it's even more so today. But even at the beginning, like went into the hiring choices, like for that first group of people. And like we were looking for people that we thought would live up to this idea of building relationships or whatever, not just warm bodies. And so I conducted interviews very similar to how I had done, at the insurance company or whatever. Those are the same things I was looking for. I wasn't looking for someone who had been a griddle cook before, or actually, I take that back. The one person we did hire on background was the person who was going to be the griddle cook. Everyone else was like either kids or people work, maybe at other restaurants, but not a burger place or whatever. But they got the main thing was they got the sense of like what we were trying to be. They understood that. Maybe they couldn't put in the terms of mission, vision, values, but they got what we were trying to do. You could tell they got it. It was more visceral. It was more, you know what I mean? And that worked to a certain extent. But the one person we hired on, experience was the first person who kind of quit in the middle of the first rush. So maybe we were
So,
right.
Mark, when you were thinking about going through this interview process, how do you filter for that? What kind of questions were you asking, or what were you doing to really identify, yeah, I think this person gets the way we want to deliver hospitality?
A lot of it, it comes from a feeling. Like, you do look at experience. You do look at what they've done before and where they had the opportunity to, sort of act in the way we would like them to act when they come with us. But do they have a genuine desire to see people happier when they leave than when they got there? Do they have a genuine desire to like bring passion to what they're doing? And maybe this might sound cliche, but it's really important. Like you can train people on how to do certain tasks. You can't train them to be ethical. You can't train them to be moral. You can't train them to be honest. Like it and I'm glad you brought that up because that comes back to when I was at the insurance company. When I was client side advertising, we were interviewing an agency to potentially come on board. And the owner of the agency said two things, and it really had an impact on me. He said, first, our agency, we have zero debt. So we're not beholden to anybody. We don't owe anyone anything. Like we make decisions for ourselves and we don't have to worry about money we owe that forces us to make decisions we don't want to make. And he said, secondly, and most importantly, though, I hire good people who happen to be good at their jobs. And that's what we do too. And it's funny because as things have progressed, like my wife and I have had more of a division of labor, as it were, and HR is all her because even though I think that was a good start, she's actually taken it to a whole nother level in terms of HR. And in fact, there was at one point where she basically cleaned house and that meant she and I were working more shifts because people were gone. But we had to get any kind of element out of there that wasn't staying true to who we were. And so
Yeah.
that's what she did.
So how have you figured out how to filter for that? I mean, I know you're going to tell me, hey, it's just a feeling you get, but like, how do you know when someone's good and someone's ethical when you're going through an interview of 30 minutes or 45 minutes? Do you have go-to questions you look for or typical
That
red flags or other things that you're paying attention to?
I think you really get a sense of it. And like I said, now the division of labor has shifted and my wife handles all the hiring and firing. So I don't know what she's doing, but I completely trust her. She's a clinical social worker. Like she works with people. Like she has to assess people all the time. So totally trust her to do all that stuff. Like, great.
Got it. So we'll have to interview her separately to get the real answer.
Yeah, you go.
What you
For
say.
take two. Yeah, absolutely. You can do that.
All right. So you hire the first group of people. You're figuring out these individual problems you need to solve, like a POS system, one at a time. What were the major surprises that came up in the process? Things were like, ooh, I wasn't expecting that.
Wow. There were, you know what? There were so many that it's hard to
What were the
nail
big
anything
ones?
down.
What were the
The
ones that are impactful? Like you may have still a little bit of trauma from.
installing the exhaust hood. Like
Okay.
the place was an auto parts store at first, and then it became a Subway sandwich place before we took it over. Subway doesn't have a need for big griddles or anything with a large or deep fryers or anything like that. So putting in the hood system was really key. I actually bought it from Hood Mart out in somewhere in the Midwest or whatever. Delivered this massive, I don't even know how much it weighs, and we installed it and realized like when we were doing that and installing our big walk-in refrigerator that there might not be enough clearance between the hood and the door when it opens. Like it was fine, like whenever, like when the door was closed, but when the door opened, I was like, holy crap. I can remember getting in my car with the plans, going over to one of the delis where my friend worked. And I was like, okay, I looked at this or whatever. I think that this is going to be about like 4.5 feet, 5 feet of clearance. Is that enough? Like, or whatever. And it's like, no, you should be fine. But I mean, I was stressing out about it because like everything was all set up because we had figured out like where all the stations were, how people weren't going to cross each other when they were preparing meals or whatever. Like kind of like in this was before the movie came out, but in The Founder with McDonald's with
Yeah.
like the burgers moving around or whatever. Like my Six Sigma friend helped us figure out a layout where no stations crossed each other or whatever. And it's like, okay, we've got that all set up, all laid out, and now, oh my God, we have a door that might not open because it's going to hit the hood. Like that was just one thing.
Okay,
Um,
walk us through the process your friend took you through on the Six Sigma side to think about how you wanted to lay it out to be
oh
efficient.
wow,
That would be interesting.
yeah, he helped us break down, the initial, menu items or whatever. We broke down the process of like every single step that has to happen for a bovine burger to go from someone saying I want this to them getting it. Like we broke it down into like every second of like, okay, the order's received, is pushed in, and it travels to the KDS, the kitchen display screens. Like the worker gets it, they start the order. Like they have this much before the burger is flipped. Once they flip it, like this other station's preparing the toppings, this other station's getting the fries that go with it. Like and where they would overlap and what the ideal timing was for it to all come together. And I said, okay, so literally, what are the steps? Where do they need to move to do this? And so when we realized all that for all the menu items, then we figured out, okay, this station should be here. That like fries should be across from shakes. Or at the time in the beginning, actually, fries and shakes was one station. So we've separated that out because of our volume. It's now two people instead of one doing both those things. This is just way too much. But what we call the griddle versus what we call mega top, which is like where all the, kind of all the cold toppings are added to a burger. Like those two need to work in concert, but they can't cross each other. So if there are hot toppings, the griddle cook has to provide those at the same time he's providing the burger. It can't be like going back and forth. It would be inefficient, cause problems, lead to inaccuracies, all that good stuff. So we mapped all of that out. And then once we had it in place, no battle plan survives first contact. So once we did that, then we realized we needed to make changes. And honestly, that was 2017 when our doors opened. We are still changing things. Even today, like our general manager, my wife and I were all on a conference call figuring out like when different colors should appear on all the kitchen display screens as to like, green, like an order is going to come out on time. Yellow, if you don't act now, it's going to be late. And red, you're already behind. We use more colorful language. Now you need to catch up. yeah, but we did, and we are changing that again.
So that was very lucky for you that you had a friend who knew all this stuff, right? Because he probably saved you a whole bunch of time.
We,
Money.
you know, and my wife's fond of saying this, like there have been a lot of things that just happened to work out. Like it almost feels like we were destined to do this. Like for example, the location we're in is next door to the barber shop my son used to go to.
Okay.
Like we had no other reason to go to that part of town except that he got his hair cut there. Why? And then the subway moved out and it was open. Okay. That we became friends, like again, through my son. He met the son of the deli guy. They met in like, I think it was like a summer camp thing or whatever. Like, and that's how we all became friends and then realized they had a deli and I'd hang out there and grab chicken wings from them because they were really good. Um, and so now I had this person with all that expertise. Um, how did I even come upon guidance? Like that was crazy too. Like which really made the finance part of this really honestly possible. Otherwise, I don't know how we would have done it. Like there were a lot of things that just sort of like directed us towards doing this.
Well, let's talk about the sort of cost to get in, because one of the things that you talked about is you weren't taking a full restaurant space. So usually when you're doing that, the costs for your tenant improvements are pretty significant, right? You're buying this whole
Yes.
hood venting system. You've got to
Yeah.
change up what's happening with the exhaust and all the other things. So
Yep.
how did you figure out what this was going to cost and how far off were you from what it actually ended up costing?
Wow. It's funny. Like so using our retirement savings and everything. I saw that just costing it all out. I think I was a little under. I should have planned for more, but at the last minute, I sort of decided to take a small business loan on for part of the equipment costs, just
Okay.
because I just didn't want us to be cash poor when we opened. Just God forbid something did go wrong.
Yep.
So that really saved us. So we had some working capital when we opened our doors. Had I not done that, then probably would have, we've been slightly over budget, which would have like, pretty much erased any working cap, any, cash flow we had on hand when doors open. So that small business loan worked out great, which we've long since paid back. But yeah, I mean, it was really just going on and searching online again. I mean, the Google searches were my best friend. Webstront store was actually really helpful. We continue to get most of our equipment from there, or anything else that we need. They're doing a really big push in advertising now, but when we first started using them, no one had heard of Webstront store.
So
But that helped us cost everything out. Yeah.
yeah, so that helped you cost the things out. Did you end up getting an SBA loan or some type of equipment financing?
And SBA loan, which I
SBA
used
loan.
for financing,
Got it.
which I used for equipment financing.
Used
Yeah.
for the equipment primarily. And
Yeah.
how much of an SBA loan did you end up getting?
It's like 45,000.
Okay, so it wasn't a huge amount, but it left you
No.
some working cap.
Yeah.
At the smaller amount, did you find that process went faster? Because you sort of mentioned, hey, at the last minute, I decided to get an SBA loan. That
Yeah.
sounded funny to me since often those can take more than 90 days.
So again, one of those great connections, like TD Bank, was really, really good. I had a really good relationship with them. They were very helpful. And then I actually came upon something I don't even know where I did, but it was sort of developing a business plan on a page. And so like it was really great. Like this template was awesome, and it just helped. And we kind of used this in the beginning too to help formulate what we were about. But I could leverage that for the SBA loan, which they took happily. They were like, "This is great," and because the number wasn't that high too, and we have
Yeah.
great credit and all that good stuff. So yeah, I mean. It was really helpful to kind of like narrow in on it and just get that little bit of cushion just because at that time, as we were approaching open, I was like, we got to have some money in the bank in case something happens.
Yeah.
Because we've invested so much in, like you said, like the leasehold improvements were huge. Like it was completely gutted. We found mold when we first got in there. Like that had to be
Oh,
taken care of. Yeah, like there was a ton of work that had to be done. There was no insulation in the building at all. Like there was a drop seat. Okay, so funny. So the mold thing and the insulation thing are related in that there was a drop ceiling. It was a standard subway. There was a drop ceiling. When they cut into the walls and found the mold, they were like, our contractor said, there's probably spores all in that drop ceiling. Like
oh,
you, so we had planned just to like paint it black and make it look cooler. He's like,
yeah.
that's all has to come out. You're gonna have to replace it. So we started taking out the ceiling tiles and we looked up and we saw these beautiful like trusses and everything else. And we were like, we gotta leave this open.
Yeah.
right? And I said, but the previous owners had put like insulation on top of that drop ceiling. It was like there is no insulation up there. So what we had to do was go up to that really high ceiling. It's like a barn almost, and put insulation all the way through that, and then put plywood on top of it, and then spray paint it all black. So that
Yeah.
was another. So that's part of why our budget started to creep up. Is like we weren't planning on doing that, but it was just so much an opportunity we couldn't pass up. It would just look too cool, and so we did that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the ambiance is way cooler when you take out the drop ceiling and then you have these nice big ceilings that's going up
Yeah,
that are
yeah.
open. Curious, how did you decide the financing you were going to use? I mean, you guys had good credit. Presumably, you may have been able to get a larger loan, but you
Mhm.
just decided at the last minute to get a smaller loan to leave some working cap. Like, why did you decide to do it that way?
Well, when I was looking at the financing for, the other, for Five Guys or one of the other franchise opportunities, like, it made me start thinking like, okay, where's the money actually going to come from? And just in doing research, I randomly, I think I came upon either a story about Guidant or Guidant itself. I can't remember at the time. It was so long ago. But the minute I heard like, about the Robs, I knew like, this is our way forward. I mean, because I've always thought about like, I'm not going to be able to use my retirement income until I'm retired. So here's an opportunity to actually use it now. And it went back to actually kind of to the 2008, like, economic crisis at the times. Like I remember at the time, you know, I had a 401k that was just losing, back with the housing bubble, all that, the housing problems and everything. I was like, you know what? I could lose my money just as good as Chase is losing it right now. So why don't I just do something? And like, I think at the time I took like all those mutual funds, whatever it was, and I put it like in GE, um, Altria, and like one other stock. I just put it in three stocks that I figured like these guys have bottomed out and they're not going away. Oh, and Microsoft, three stocks, and it worked out great. I mean, it was at the bottom of the market. They all went up, like, or whatever. Then I diversified after that or whatever. But it was like, but I took a chance on me. And that was kind of like our thinking on this. Like, we were going to take a chance on ourselves. And so, like, why not use our, retirement funds and see if we can grow it better than putting that in mutual funds? Like, let's invest in ourselves. Let's take a risk on ourselves because we'll have more control over what we do in the restaurant than what the market decides to do any given day.
Yeah. And so this was about 8 years ago.
That we did the fine. No, oh yeah, right. 2016. Yeah,
So,
we
so
did the
nine,
financing in 2016.
so 9 years ago, you opened Bovine Burgers,
Hmm.
and you're doing it primarily with an investment in retirement funds, but with a little bit of SBA backed
Hmm.
financing for some of the equipment.
Yep.
Okay, so walk us through what happened with the store. Like, presumably, it all went perfectly, exactly as you planned, right?
Yeah, of course. No hiccups, no issues, no watchouts. It was all just pretty ho hum. Um, so like I said, or I mentioned, our griddle cook quit on the friends and family night. Told
Which is
me
before you even open, right? This is
before
like
we so
you're
yeah.
cold open.
This was like, just pressure test. It was only supposed to be all the employees, like, their friends and family. It got out to the whole town, literally lines out the door. Like we were absolutely swamped. And our cook at about 6 o'clock, not the dinner hour or anything, walked off the line and started doing dishes. And I went back to him. I was like, "What are you doing?" And he goes like, "I don't know if this is for me." I'm like, "Okay, well, you can figure that out after we finish, opening night here or the soft opening. Like, get back. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do." Like my friend, the deli guy, like he was there. Like he had a full time job besides his delis. Like he was a network engineer type, for like a very large telecommunications company at the time. He literally took off his suit jacket, put on an apron, and he worked our griddle for the rest of that night.
Oh man, that's
Yeah,
an awesome story.
yeah. And so in the meantime, I'm out in the parking lot with our griddle cook, like, so what's going on? What are we doing here? He's like, I just need time to think about it. I'll let you know Monday. And I said, it's Wednesday. Like, what am I supposed to do between now and Monday when you figure out what you're going to do? I don't know, whatever. So my deli guy trained me how to use a griddle. And I became our griddle cook for the first, 7, 10, 14 days. I can't remember now. But it's all a blur. And I just remember working that griddle for those couple weeks. Like, never have I worked so hard for so little in my entire life. But I did it because it had to get done. It just
Yeah.
had to get done. So, but so that was the very beginning. I think maybe 2 weeks in, we had a flood. Waters was coming out of the floor drains. Luckily, one of our staff members, he lived literally across the street. He raided his mother's linen cabinet and brought like all these towels, all these anything to sop it up because it was starting to go everywhere. Because there was some bad plumbing. There was stuff in the pipes that no one knew about. We had to snake that emergency snake session or a snake appointment or whatever. Like I think it was at the time like well over $1,000. I can't remember. That happened. I can't even tell you, running out of burgers because we used to grind our own meat like in the restaurant, in the cooler. I would do it. So after we closed, I would go in the cooler with sides of meat and start cutting it up. And it had to be done in the cooler for health department reasons. I couldn't even do it in like the nice warmth of the kitchen. It had to be done in the cooler. So I'm wearing like a thick jacket and I'm cutting meat, I'm grinding it in a meat grinder or whatever, like to the point where we were running out of burgers every day because I would stay there till sometimes up to like 4 a.m. grinding 150, 200 burgers. And we'd sell out and do it all over again. And my wife, again, totally she was like, why don't we just get our butcher who's providing these sides of meat to do our blend and have them make the patty? I was like, great idea. I couldn't see it at the time. I just knew I had to grind meat the next day. Like that's all I was thinking about. And she was thinking bigger. And so that's what we done. And that's where we've been ever since with that. And that saved us a lot of time. But yeah, like it was just thing after thing after thing. And to this, I mean, we had our fire suppression system went off for no reason. It wasn't because there was a fire like it's supposed to do. It turned out, long story short, there's a wire that's under tension. Like this is the same wire they use on airplanes, right? And there are little links in that wire that are sensitive to heat. And so if there's a fire there, it melts those links and then that releases the tension and all the chemicals come down. Well, this just happened. The system went off and we come to find out that steel cable snapped. And our fire guy was like, I've done this for 25 years. I've never seen a cable snap. But lucky us. And so, we were like, okay, we adjusted. The team was really good. Like some of my guys, as they were like the alarm was going off, some of them actually took the time to clock out as they ran out the door thinking like there was a fire. It was like, good for you. That's nice. But they stayed, we cleaned up everything. We did a really, cause the chemicals came in, it hit the oil spilled over all over the floor. Like we cleaned everything. We stayed there till it was done and we were ready to open the next day. Awesome. So we opened the next day and we're starting the lunch rush. It's really good. And I'm noticing that burgers are taking a long time to come out. I'm like, what's going on? Again, long story short is when the chemicals hit the griddle, it cooled it down so fast that it warped the plate. And so now all the heat was like basically escaping out the back. Oh, so we had to get a new griddle. And so that meant renting a truck, getting a pallet jack from Home Depot, finding a place in South Jersey. And that's what I spent the next couple of days doing, getting a new griddle and then getting it in there. Like my whole staff helped us lift this into position. Like all this happened in the first year.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. You're making it sound like such an amazing adventure to go on, Mark.
Yeah, it was, it got to the point where I was ready to quit, to be honest with you. And then, I was doing this, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. I was doing, scheduling and payroll and ordering and everything. I was doing it all myself. I was trying to do it all myself. And I was just at the point where like, I can't, this is just too much. Like, what have I done? I've taken a wrong turn. Like it was a great idea, but now like, I just don't have it. And my wife and I talked about it and she fought for it. She advocated for it. She had the vision for what this could be. And I was like, all right, I'll stick with it. And she was like, and I'll be more involved. I said, great. And that was, I can't even remember when that was. Was that 2019? I can't remember what year it was. Like it feels so long ago now.
What changed then?
What changed since then?
Yeah. Well, what started to shift that made you, I mean, sure, you had a moment where your wife talks you back into recommitting to the business, but that only lasts so long if there's not light at the end of the tunnel. So what started to shift for you that made it livable?
Just knowing that she was so committed to it. Like it kind of like re-energized me, and knowing that like, we're sharing this burden. It was like, okay, all right, we can make it happen. And I think it was either then or right after that COVID hit. So it must have been like 2019. Yeah. So we had to deal with that. We thought that we were going to, go out of business. Thank God for the PPP. that really helped us. But we changed our model. We adjusted. Like we relied so much more on delivery and pickup orders, like and curbside pickup and all that good stuff. Like we always had like, takeout has always been a huge part of our business, but we leaned into it. We stopped doing a lunch service during COVID because everyone who worked around us, they weren't there. So why are we open for lunch then? So we became like a dinner only spot for a while. Um, that is the thing. Like we could probably spend the next, amount of time we have just talking about all the problems. But what has really been remarkable is like we have found solutions to everything.
Yeah.
Because we had to do it. The one thing I was going to tell you, because I have to bring it up, was we had our water heater just blow in the middle of service. We had some staff members who were like, "Well, you don't have hot water, so that's a health violation. Like, we should just close." And we're like, my wife was like, "No, not going to happen." So she went to the barber shop next door, ran a hose from their hot water heater to our sink, so we would have hot temperature water, like to keep sanitary measures in place to keep on working. So there was a hose out of their barber shop into the back of our kitchen into the sink, so that we could keep operating while we had our some plumbers that we knew very well come in and do a swap like the next morning actually. So we find a way.
It sounds, Mark, like that has been something that has shifted how you and your wife maybe even look at the world. So why don't you tell us just a little bit about how it has changed you being a business owner and being forced to solve all these unexpected problems and adapt to all the things that are happening that you couldn't account for?
It's kind of hard to even put into words. I think the thing for us the most is like the restaurant is like our third child. And I think the thing that has impacted us the most is like we've seen it grow from like a toddler that like without like constant care and feeding, like it's going to die, like like an infant or whatever, to a toddler, to like the thriving adolescent that it is now, where it has taken on a life of its own. And it's amazing to witness, just like with literally your own kids. Like, so proud of our two kids. They're amazing or whatever. But like, and to see their development and just to be like, wow, like we helped them become what it is. And like, it's the same with the restaurant. Like, there's sometimes I'll just speak for myself. Like, I'll just step back and look at it and be like, wow, like we created that. Like, it's got momentum. It's got a life of its own. Like, it's an entity now. Like, it's a staple to so many people in this neighborhood. Like and it's growing. Like that sort of drives you. Like, and so, but our mental state has changed to like one of like, if necessary, like, on the fly problem solving. Things we never even realized, like, because we have to find a way. Like when you've got like 50 screaming, like not screaming, but very hungry people, and you're the only thing between them and a burger, like you find a way to get them that burger, and a burger that they're going to enjoy and not come back with it and cause even more problems. Not cause more problems, but put us back and have to make another burger again and again and again. You just find a way. And it's been amazing that we found our way through this, and we made a lot of mistakes, don't get me wrong, but we've learned from all those mistakes and created something now that we're both very, very proud of. And, we want to see expand, which is why we started franchising last week.
You started last week? You started working on the paperwork, or you started actually, like, you're filed and you're talking with people? When's your first discovery day you're going to do?
No. No. We just, so the FDD, everything is all done. Yeah. We launched the website last week.
Got it.
The franchising website. Yeah. So now we're open to prospects.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's that's what we decided to do. Is like, it was, and again, it was really her, like creating a legacy was like really important. I mean, it's important to both of us, but especially her. Like, like it means something, and it does. And we don't think either of our kids will work in this. Like, if it does become this large kind of thing with, many franchise locations, like neither one will probably work in it. And our son did work there. Like, he worked there several shifts, many shifts for a long time. But he probably wouldn't want anything to do with it. And that's okay. No one's going to force the family business on him.
So Bovine Burgers, an adolescent moving into their teenage years where you are going to be franchising. How are you and your wife looking at the future of the business? What are you trying to build for?
for a time when we are completely removed from operations and we're totally focused on supporting other franchisees, doing kind of what we're doing right now, like imparting like our wisdom, our experience to help them avoid a lot of the landmines that we hit, and let them, find their own sort of entrepreneurial spirit and do their own thing. But we're going to give them a guidebook. So the same thing that Five Guys I was hoping would have given us, we're going to give to other people. And honestly, like, it's a get rich slow scheme, right? So, we'll hopefully have a whole bunch of these, and eventually we'll just be the founders, and we'll just be kind of in the background, and other people will run it, and we can say we did that and be on a beach somewhere.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Have you already selected the beach?
No.
Okay.
Actually, I don't even know why I said the beach, because I kind of really even don't like that. I'm from California. Like, the best beaches were out there. Like, and maybe Turks and Caicos was pretty good. But otherwise, I don't need that. I'm very comfortable just in a lodge somewhere or just in a room. Like, I'm good. I don't need to be on the beach.
Awesome. If somebody wants to find out more about Bovine Burgers and the franchise opportunity, where would you send them?
Bovineburgers.com. That'll take you to the main corporate site. You can see what we have to offer and what we do, all of our events that we have. We're doing comedy shows now.
What?
Yeah. So we had our first ever comedy show March 1st. This was my wife's idea. Again, and it was one of those moments of fate where a guest came in who happens to book comedians, and she was talking to him. Like, he's like, oh, perfect. We were thinking about doing a comedy show. And we did it. So March 1st was the first one. The next one's April 26th. We sold out. People loved it. It was great. $15 a seat. I mean, you can't beat it. Just a 2-item minimum. Yep. It was a lot of fun. With up and coming comedians, like, or whatever. And it's something local. You don't have to go to, the big areas around here, like New Brunswick or Princeton or New York City. Like, you can do it in a very easy to get to, easy to find parking place in New Jersey, which is a rarity. That's just one of the many things. So anyway, bovineburgers.com, see all that stuff. And then if you're interested, you go to the link that says own a bovine franchise, and that'll take you to the franchise site and see how you can get one too.
And what states are you filed in, Mark? Are you just opening it up in sort of the Northeast or broader?
We're going to be very, very targeted. So it's New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania only.
Okay, for right now.
Non-registration states. But we want to make sure that any location is within a 30 to 90-minute drive maximum from home base, because we want our first franchisees to really draft off of the brand reputation we've created, to be close enough for that without cannibalizing their business. And then we can be available to, help look at site selection, look at site design, all that good stuff, and not require a plane trip to do it.
Yeah. That's smart, Mark.
Thanks.
Get rich slow. I like it.
Get rich slow. That's our plan.
Well, Mark, thanks so much for your time today. It's inspiring to hear about all the challenges that you've had to take on and how it's helped you power through, and where the business is at now, 9 years later, where you're sort of moving into the next stage of growth and expansion for you. The business is changing, right?
Yeah.
Now it's no longer your primary responsibility is going to change from operating one store to supporting entrepreneurs being successful, and that's a whole new challenge.
Which I'm excited to do. I'm excited. I mean, I really am excited to do that, because I feel like now we're at a place where, the cliche is true. Like, we're not working in the business, working on the business, and now we're working on the growth of the business. So I think it's a natural sort of progression, and it's exactly, where I want to be.
Great. Well, we wish you continued success, Mark.
All right, Jeremy, thank you very much.
Cheers, my friend.
Thanks for listening to the Create the Life You Want podcast. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to future episodes by clicking the subscribe button, you know where. If you're an aspiring business owner, you may also want to subscribe to the Create the Life You Want newsletter for more inspiration and tips delivered to your inbox every week. You can find the link to that in the show notes, as well as on my personal website, jeremyames.com. If you've already decided you want to start or buy a business, consider exploring your financing options by heading to our sponsor's website at www.guidantfinancial.com. That's GUIDANT financial.com. See you in the next episode.